Welcome back. You're listening to the discussion Innovation in Government, sponsored by Carasoft on Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network. I'm your host, Jason Miller. My guest today, Eva Skidmore, the Vice President of Public Sector for Salesforce. Eva, last segment, you teed us up perfectly for a discussion on technology, even though we made the point earlier that this transformation, the customer, the user experience really is more about culture and talent and people than it is about technology. But given the fact that Salesforce provides technology, and given the fact that technology underpins so much of this as well, let's talk a little bit about that IT transformation. What would that look like as agencies need to keep in mind the user experience, the customer experience issue?
Excellent, thank you. So when I think about how to bring these pieces together, it's absolutely about culture, it's absolutely about people and process, but the technology is designed to enable people to be more efficient and more effective. And as part of the modernization process, picking a platform, picking a trusted provider based upon certain criteria is going to be essential to success. So the way that we think about it is, if it is fast and easy to implement, it is secure, it is compliant, enables you as an IT organization and you as a program to be agile and customer-centric. All of these factors play a really important role in whether you are setting yourself up for long-term sustainability and cost savings over time.
Now, if I talk to 101 vendors, they all will tell me how fast they are, how easy they are, how secure they are, right? Because no one's going to say we're not fast. No one's going to say, well, we're not really that secure, but you can use this anytime you want. So maybe give me a sense from a Salesforce perspective why what you guys are providing agencies and through maybe a customer experience story or other ways that kind of lives up to this idea of fast, secure, compliant, et cetera.
I think one example I'll give is we recently had responded to an RFP, and there were 4,744 requirements in this RFP. And when all was said and done, 70 or 80% of the requirements were met with out-of-the-box capabilities of the Salesforce solution. So the relationship management aspects, case management, whether it was outbound or inbound communications, thinking about transactions and application development, and the security, meeting the compliance standards that were part of the requirements, as well as the training and enablement and collaboration tools. All of those things were sufficient out of the box to meet a majority of those requirements in that RFP. And I think that's significant as people are trying to figure out sort of where to go and how to identify the best platform for modernization.
Too often we hear agencies want to customize, well, but we don't want to change our process. And one of the lessons I think we've learned over the last, over the last maybe 5 or so years, is you have to change the process. You can't continue to change the technology because that's not working. When you meet with federal customers or even state and local customers or private sector customers, do they get that point that, how change your process, don't make us change our technology because that's just going to cause more trouble than maybe it's worth?
I don't know if that's necessarily what I would say. I would say the value of being able to develop low-code or no-code applications makes a really big difference because they can customize the experience, they can customize the way that their constituents interact with the platform without necessarily having to have developers on staff.
And it's funny because you bring up low-code and no-code let's say about 6 or 8 months ago, I'd never heard that term, and now it's starting to kind of gain some momentum as more, I think people are talking about it, not just vendors, but I think inside government as well. Mm-hmm. And I think for the reason you said, you can do some minimal customization, but not worried about the hiring developers. Mm-hmm. The other piece of this, and I think that's important, is the data. We talk all about the data. I feel like it's been all about the data for the last maybe 10 years or 15 years. But one thing that you guys are really keen on is ensuring that the citizens and the agencies who serve those citizens have that data to help make better decisions. Talk about the data strategy piece and how that kind of influenced the customer experience effort.
I think that's a really, really important question, and we're seeing a lot in the news about artificial intelligence. At Salesforce, we frequently talk about the pace of change. We talk about this fourth industrial revolution, which is the age where everything's connected, there's a new level of intelligence in everything we're doing. And data analytics and AI are playing a huge role even in the simplest application. So, when considering the opportunity to solve complex problems, the data, big data, AI, analytics offer benefits like things like being able to use complex algorithms to forecast extreme weather, to anticipate disaster of one kind or another. But we can also apply the data and analytics to help make our jobs easier, even for simple everyday tasks. So the idea is give employees the insight they need so that they can do their jobs more effective and more efficiently.
Now, obviously Salesforce has a data platform of sorts, and I think, but talk a little bit about why that's important to connect it back to the open platform discussion we had and connect it back to the bigger cloud discussion.
So I'll answer your question in two ways. That yes, that Salesforce has placed what we call Einstein into everything we do.
You're going to confuse me, you know that.
I know.
Einstein's a DHS program, but now I got to think of it differently. But talk about Einstein from the Salesforce perspective.
So AI and data analytics capability gives frontline programs and back office ways to automate simple and redundant tasks and functions. So it might mean using service bots to field and answer simple questions so that agents can handle the higher priority or higher complexity inquiries. So the ultimate goal is a more streamlined and responsive customer experience. And I'll give you an example. When NCI uses a Salesforce platform to offer artificial intelligence as a service to government. And what this means for them is automating repetitive, high volume tasks within IT systems and tools used for data migration, back office support, and service desk. So they essentially use Einstein to remove aged accounts from their systems, so data that is old or no longer relevant, and they built an app to run different types of checks to find and manage those records. So the application has created a 98% savings in time, which I'd say is pretty amazing.
You bring up the robotics, and it's a fascinating trend that we're seeing across government. Are you seeing some other trends that you highlight when it comes to the customer service side? We talk a lot about user-centered design. We talk about the concept of you mentioned AI. What other things are agencies asking for, or can you talk broadly about what other things you're seeing, whether public or private sector?
I think some of the major themes that we're seeing, especially as it relates to Salesforce, is how do government agencies do intake of cases or conversations with customers? How do agencies help applicants with an easier, more streamlined way of securing government services? Government agencies are looking for better ways to outreach to constituents and then also manage their mission applications and their programs for success. So we end up spending a lot of time talking about those things as we're engaging with agencies.
There's a lot of pieces in play here. We've talked about the technology side, the cloud, this idea of the big data strategy, AI. We've talked about the culture side. We've talked about the people side. What's the missing piece? Is there something that agencies aren't talking about? Is there something that that is emerging in the private sector that agencies need to start paying attention to? Anything that comes to mind?
I think the buzzword that I'm hearing is digital transformation, right, and that process of digital transformation.
Is this the hashtag game you want to play on Twitter? Hashtag
innovation, modernization, transformation, yeah.
But I think that's a fair point. I mean, everyone wants to digitally transform, and what does that really mean? And I think that's kind of what we're trying to get to today, is that it's a combination of the user's needs and the back-end technology. When you talk to digital transformation, do agencies get what that means, or is they just using the buzzword?
I think there are some real trailblazers who are thinking about this in a very strategic way. It takes a lot of work to put together that roadmap for transformation and to identify, again, as we talked about earlier, the best place to start. And so, if there are systems that are locked in and super core to the mission, where the opportunity is to create a better user experience, or if there are programs where making employees are more efficient, it's all about staying focused on the outcomes and how to give that agency that start in iterating and really, manifesting to achieve that future state that they're looking to achieve in the transformation.
It's the thing about the future state, and I think agencies are this one of the areas I see that they're missing is the digital strategy. If you remember that, I think 2012, OMB put out a kind of a memo and developed this digital strategy. It hasn't been updated, and here we are 2019, so 7 years is an awful long time. It's always interesting what this administration is going to do with some of these older documents, older strategies, and I know they're focused on really re-looking at a lot of these strategies, so maybe that's something that we could look out for in the future. Eva, this has been a fascinating conversation. We're just about out of time. So we've talked about a number of different issues, but I want to just kind of sum this up. What's your advice to agencies? Because no one's starting at zero. Nobody's already done. No one will ever be done. It's a continuum. What's your advice to them, or what are some potholes they should avoid? What's the big takeaways from our conversation?
To me, I think the beauty of government is that agencies can share best practices one to another. And what I would encourage all of our listeners to do is to find those trailblazers in government who have taken that first, that second, that third step to transformation. One way they can do that, with us in particular, is join us on May 14th for the DC World Tour. There are also a lot of great thought leadership and best practices where the roadmap and workshops are available to help government agencies think through the steps of digital transformation in a way that is achievable within current budgets. So I think those are the two main things.
And there's a lot of help for agencies. GSA runs a citizen engagement kind of office or organization, and then I'm sure there's some playbooks. I'm sure somebody has a playbook somewhere that they could borrow as well too. All right, well, this has been a fascinating conversation. I really appreciate your time today, but that's all the time we have for today. So let me thank my guest, Eva Skidmore, the Vice President of Public Sector for Salesforce. Eva, thank you very much for taking the time today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm Jason Miller, and you've been listening to the discussion Innovation in Government, sponsored by Carasoft on Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search innovation.